everyone. Today in Tech Air Solution podcast, we have a guest who is been who's like for the consecutive 13 years, she has been named as the top 30 leadership gurus for 2025. She's a CEO and president of Creative Energy Options. So welcome, Sylvia Lafair. Tell us about you and what does your company do?
Well, thank you. I really appreciate being with you at this time. So, you want me to talk about me?
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, "Isn't that your favorite subject?" But I'm going to start with a question. You can answer it, you don't have to. But whoever's watching or listening to this podcast, this is the question. When stress hits the hot button, we all have a natural reaction. And either we shut down and become quiet, or we start to shout and become very noisy. So those are the two, what we want to do is get in the middle. But when something comes at you that's really upsetting, do you want to answer it or not? It's up to you.
But my behavior is something I push myself from that thing for a moment and then think about that moment and then again start working on how to resolve that one. So this is my approach of dealing with the stress. So I will think about how I can reduce that stress. But you're right. I should be in the middle, not just shutting down my whole thing.
Well, but your answer was quite good. Most people do either or when something comes at them and stress starts to build up. And I've watched this over years in working in organizations. And when we shut down, it goes internal. We may think it, we feel it, but we won't say it. The other side is we get really noisy and become angry and scream and yell. And I have to admit, that one is mine. I don't do it anymore. Please hear me. I don't do it anymore. I've learned how not to. But it's a starting point to look at leadership and how you behave, especially when something comes at you that you don't like and you get very stressed. And that's been, for me, a major part of my career. So, I was a family therapist, and the famous story that led me into a new direction was we were doing a program for parents whose teenage kids were making them, kind of tear their hair out. And at the end, and the room was full. And at the end of the meeting, a man walked up. I thought he would talk about a son or a daughter. And he said to me, "Will you come work with my senior leadership team?" I had not been working in the business world. This is many years ago, but it intrigued me, but it made no sense. So I said, "Why do you want me to do that?" He said, "They're fighting." I said, "So what?" He said, "But Sylvia, you're talking about people, parents and children who have to get along. They have to get along." Made sense to me.
Yeah.
And what I like to say to people is if something comes at you that doesn't make sense, stay curious. And if it's not going to affect your health or, something serious, go for it. See what happens. Well, for me, I went in, worked with his company, and my whole career changed. And I've been fortunate enough to travel the world and work with many organizations, all because that senior leadership team was fighting. So I want to thank them. Stopped fighting. They got better. And that's what I teach in the workplace now is how to become aligned and how to you do it already, so I'm impressed. You think before you speak. Most people will react rather than respond. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely, Sylvia. I think you very well mentioned how this journey has started and how you pivoted towards this industrial experience right now. So tell us about your creative energy options. What exactly, how many employees do you have and what kind of clients that you guys deal with? So a little about your company now.
Well, the name Creative Energy Options came about when we were still doing personal growth work for families and couples. But the shorten, it's Creative Energy Options, which is CEO for short. So somehow I was being directed to work in organizations without even realizing it. And people would always say when they would come to our company, we were in suburban Philadelphia at the time. Now we're in Northern California. I'm going over to CEO. And, it sounded fine. It sounded cute, but that's who I work with now are executives, senior teams, emerging leaders, people who really want to become the best they can be. And I've been focused doing it in the workplace. And
Nice.
that's what Creative Energy Option does. I have many coaches that I've trained, and anybody listening, if you're interested, there will be a new coaching program because I really want to spread what we're doing even wider in the work world.
So let's talk about the industry as a whole. So I know that leadership development industry is talking about the emotional intelligence for like 20 years. So right now, what's the biggest shift that has happened in this consulting firm that most business leaders or the leadership is still missing or ignoring? What would that be?
Well, first, I want to acknowledge Dan Goleman, who is the one who really took. I mean, we used to only think from our neck up. We think
Mm.
about strategy and numbers and bottom lines. And, it was the intellectual, the intelligence. And Dan Goleman really brought the emotional intelligence where we listen to people in a different way. And I've been bringing in the third part, which is the gut,
Mhm.
which is where our intuition and it's our safety valve to save us. It's really if something isn't working and you start feeling I better be careful, pay attention. I
Yeah.
really think, and so it's the new leadership operating system is about head, heart, and gut, and
Mhm.
it's about becoming self-aware. Now we go up and down when emotional intelligence came about. People really were kind of jumping in with that and then we back off. It's just the nature of human beings. But the idea of being coherent, the idea of head, heart, and gut being aligned is really
Mhm.
very important. It's kind of an energy exchange. And it's interesting because I will often ask in our groups, who is it who would walk into a room that you would look over and you would really pay attention and feel trust and good about? And
Yeah.
it's interesting. Every class we've ever done, it's basically the same. It's usually Jesus, Buddha. Often it's Nelson Mandela. Occasionally it's Eleanor Roosevelt. And sometimes people will say, well, it's my grandmother,
Yeah.
or somebody like that.
Yeah.
But it's a presence, and when we are coherent, head, heart, and gut aligned, and
Mhm.
we walk in a room, people know it,
Exactly.
and it takes work because we haven't been taught that.
Yeah,
Make
that's very
sense?
good, Sylvia. I think it's the first time I'm hearing the coherence of head, heart, and gut. Gut is the new part I have heard. I have heard before about the brain and heart, but I never heard before the gut option. Now the gut that's completely makes sense. That if you are coherence in these three things, you are in the right state of mind. That's perfectly well said. Considering that there are a lot of changes in the industry right now, now people are moving towards the AI in order to get to the any of the feedback from their behavior, or they generally talk about to any chat GPT or any open AI LLMs. They just talk about their heart out to them and they expect something that a human could give it to them.
Well, we go through cycles and we will continue to go through cycles. But right now we're at a place where we have cycled to a place of such division,
Mhm.
either you're on my team or you're on the other team. And if you're on
Yeah.
the other team, you're not okay. And I've been watching, a little bit of the World Cup, which is going on right now.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because 'cause I'm thinking, "Okay, how do we pull everybody together and say, 'Our team didn't do as well as your team, but our team is still good, and
Yeah.
your team is good?'" We have to move back to a place I think we're heading this is a trend that I see,
Yeah.
toward understanding, and this is a Sylvia thing.
Yeah.
We're all connected, and nobody wins unless we all do. And
Yeah.
people
So
sometimes
beautiful.
will just roll their eyes when I say that. But then when we start to look at how each person has their own responsibility for that connection and
Mhm.
will behavior change if we do, that's the trend I see that we want to move back to more community and caring. I
Yeah.
mean, we had it. And interestingly, think back, I don't know where you were during COVID, but it
Mhm.
was a time when it seemed to me people were more caring about each other because we
Yeah.
were all going through the same strange complexity of masks and
Yeah.
fear of illness. And then after that, I don't know, something happened and we became less kind to each other. And maybe it's me, maybe it's because I want to see it that way, but I see the theme of people beginning to reach a hand out to another and taking their own personal responsibility for aligning internally their head, heart, and gut so they
Mhm.
don't react, they respond.
COVID. In the COVID, we were all There was one line that was flashing on the news always, like, we are in this together.
Yeah.
When we are corporate, I was in Canada back then, so there was a line like, we are all in this together, and that was very powerful line. Like, a lone person could think like, like, I could be die in a few months, right? So, but if they said that we are all in this together, then we get a sense of like closeness to each other. But now, as we move forward, that's vanishing. And FIFA is a very good example that people are coming together right now in the form of a sport or sporting any of the community. That's very good thing to mention, Sylvia. So I really like your answer that you have given so far. So now let's talk about your company. So I would like to know what is working perfectly well for you lately in this business, and what is the other thing that is producing friction in your business that you would like to improve in the future. What are those two things?
Well, I'll start with the friction. It's
Yeah.
called AI.
Yeah.
Because I remember when, I guess it was in the '90s when the internet was
Exactly.
really starting and
Yeah.
people would say, "It's just a passing fad."
Yeah.
I mean, hello, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, my daughter was visiting one day and I had to contact somebody and she said, "Well, send them an email." I said, I can't do that. That's too difficult." She looked at me, rolled her eyes, she said, "Mom, if you can't do that, you shouldn't be doing anything about
Yeah.
leadership." I mean, I couldn't live without it now, and then, of course, it moved to texting, and
Yeah.
now what you said is what's happening. I think people are going through a phase of dependence on
Yeah.
AI. I mean, I
Yeah.
find it fascinating,
Yeah.
and but to me, it's like driving a car. When I get in a car and I turn the key
Mhm.
and the car starts and I start driving, I really don't think of what in the motor is connecting with each other. That's somebody else's issue. So when
Mhm.
I do ask a question of AI, I don't go to what the questions are there, but it's a challenge. And what
Mhm.
happens is everything. This is all I know about physics.
Okay.
That everything has a reaction. So if
Yeah.
something swings one way, it's gonna swing the other way
Other way.
where it gets to the middle place, and I've seen a lot of dependence for everything, not
Yeah.
just for work, but for personal issues, for health issues. Somebody said, "Well, AI said I shouldn't go to the doctor for X, Y, and Z," and I said, "Well, and if you get really sick, what is a
Yeah.
guy gonna do for you?" And I don't know. It's mystery. It's a
Yeah.
mystery. So that's the challenge. What's working for me is in our company, and I have trained many coaches, and on my website, the ones that work with me and our company now are there.
Mhm.
And interestingly, most of them came from the business world rather than the psychological world, which is where I started.
Mhm.
But they would go through all the issues. They come to a program and say, "Yeah, I can't talk to that colleague, and so is annoying me, or my boss is driving me crazy." And then they began to see how to navigate those tricky territories, and they'd say, "We want to teach this to others." So for me, what's working is I have great coaches. And as I said, we're going to start another coaching session in a couple of months after I finish my new book, which I'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But the key is we have one unique theme that we work with, and it's been helpful for many years. And that
Mhm.
is that our original organization, which is the family,
Yeah.
shows up in our present organization at work. And
Mhm.
when I was, again, that's because I had the background as a family therapist and then went into a workplace. But the connection is there. So everybody I work with, if they say that's a nonsense and then they go somewhere else. But if they can get that concept of, and here's how it works. We have bosses like parents, we have
Yeah.
coworkers like siblings, we have salaries like allowances,
Yeah.
and we even have a timeout in the workplace called a performance improvement plan.
Yeah.
So when you begin to look at it that way and you say, what did you learn in your original organization about how to handle conflict?
Mhm.
What happens when are you praised? What happens if you are doing something that's creating a problem? Do you get sent to your room, smacked? What would happen? And those behaviors were internalized. So that's what's working for us is helping to teach individuals, executives, and
Yeah.
teams how to work together and learn how to, again, I'm going to push this one, to respond to each other rather than react.
Yeah.
We didn't have any power, and you were told, go to your room. You went to your room, or
Yeah.
you fought it and you got, in bigger.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's very good said thing you, Sylvia, mentioned that we need to talk. I think that is related to something that I always share, that we need to talk about our indifferences. If something you don't like, you can tell to me, and I will think about that one and try to be in your shoes in order to understand that one. And that's perfectly well that you Sam mentioned that this is thing working very well for you as a organization head. This is working well. Another thing that I would like to mention is the AI fear that's been totally normal these days. The fear of AI in among the company leaders, or how they can use it. So definitely, this is where we come into action and we solve that one. But I will cover that one in a later part. Let's talk about your book. You briefly mentioned about the Glimmers Effect. Let's hear about that one for a moment now. What is it, and what we gonna get it from that?
Well, a glimmer is simply a moment of awareness.
Yeah.
And if you pay attention to it, it becomes larger
Mm-hmm.
and you can work with it. And it's interesting because I've watched in groups when somebody would be in a conflict situation in the group and they're learning how to speak with each other in a more effective way. Back to what we're saying, we're all in it together and nobody wins unless we all do.
Yeah.
That you begin to say there is another way. And I'm going to tell you a quick story because it's a financial one, but it's interesting. I was working with a sales and marketing team, and the marketing team was very annoyed because they had some of their funding cut. And
Okay.
sales was doing pretty well, and we
Mhm.
went around the room and people were talking about their own personal frustrations and struggles and why did this happen? And we took a break. Now, at the
Mhm.
beginning, remember the theme, we're
Yeah.
all in it together.
We got it. Yeah. Yeah.
Took a break, and after the break, somebody from sales came over and said, "Listen, we came up with an idea, and I wanna know if it's okay to share it here." I said, "Well, what is it?" They said, "Well, we've been doing well. We've made a lot of money. Marketing has helped, but they're really feeling kind of down right now because they can't do some of the things they wanted to. We'd like to give them some money,
Okay.
you know, from our
Well.
bank account,
Mm.
literally,
Mhm.
and is that okay?" I said, "It's okay with me."
Yeah.
We called the senior director who was in the room in the building at the time, and she said, "Well, if that would be what you wanna do, do it." And so we came back in the meeting, and we talked a little bit, and then somebody from sales said, "May I say something?" And literally did a presentation to offer X amount of money to marketing from their, quote, "bank account." And I can't tell you the difference. I mean, nobody was sobbing and, but they were emotionally met by each other saying,
Well.
"You would do that for us?" And
Well.
they said, "Well, we have the money, you need the money, so take it." And marketing started doing some amazing things. And of course, the story ended with even better bottom
Yeah.
line profits
Yeah.
by the end. But they listened to each other and
Mhm.
they connected, which doesn't happen in sales and marketing that often.
Exactly. That's very good story, Sylvia. That very good story that you mentioned about how we can solve the problem by understanding each other and understanding that we are all in this together. That theme is very good. So you've been working in this consulting for firms for a decades. So what would you, I would say, suggest to the people in this industry? What they should do different in order to increase the productivity, for example? What are the few things that you would like to address to them?
To people who are coaches, is that
No,
who you're
to business leaders, for example.
well,
And yeah.
read my Glimmers book. Because it will give the process, and it's about, as I said, understanding that what you learned in your original organization shows up at work, and that when stress hits the hot button, we usually will respond, we will react, and we need to do what I sense you do much of the time, which is take that deep breath.
Yeah.
Think about what is the best way forward and then go that way. We lost that. We've lost that ability because we've become such a reactive society. And it's
Yeah,
not just the United, it's in the world. We become
exactly.
very reactive. We need to move to responding.
Yeah, that's very good message.
Let me just say this, between the trigger and the glimmer, there's a moment, and it's that moment of self-awareness that can change a life. It can change how you respond to everybody.
So let's talk about your company. For now, looking ahead of 6 to 12 months, where would you like to take this creative energy options to? Like, what is the goal for you in next 6 to 12 months, and what is the one thing that is keeping you getting from there?
Well, I need to spread I want the word to be spread to more people, and, when we go in to work with companies, it can be, financially a
Hmm.
nice penny or
Yeah.
nickel or dollar or whatever, and so I'm planning to start a membership site, which will have some tiers, but it will give people, the ability to really understand this in a larger even though it's a different kind of work. I've done a lot of work with school districts and
Okay.
superintendents who are, bosses, leaders, and I'd like to see this more with the educators and then the parents. The idea of and what I'm calling it's funny because I had a dream. This came to me in a dream, a group I in the dream, I was working with a team and they were finally becoming really accountable. And somebody said, well, normally when there's this much tension in the room, I become an avoider and I get out of here, but I'm
Mm.
going to stay because it's important. And it shifted the energy in the whole room, just that one sentence. And then somebody said, normally I'll sit here and judge people. Sometimes I'll say it out loud and sometimes I
Yeah.
won't, but I'm here in my mind pointing fingers at them. And I'm gonna listen differently. And by the
Right.
end of the meeting, they had solved some pretty complex problems, and they looked and they said, "We're getting the glimmers glow." This
Yeah.
was in my dream, and I thought, "Oh, how fun." So I'm starting to work with getting the glimmers glow. So we'll
No,
see
that's
where it
beautiful.
goes.
That's very beautiful story, Sylvia. So that's all, Sylvia. That's all from my question. So anything would you like to share?
Well, I like the what you're doing with your podcast. Your questions are really good. They're very future oriented, which is,
Yeah.
what we have to do. Instead of fearing the future, we have to really talk about it and think about it and create it. And
Exactly.
so I just want to acknowledge your ability as a podcaster and as a questioner and interviewer. And I
Yeah.
thank you very much. It's an honor being on your program.
Thank you, Gil Sylvia, for taking your time for us, for being on the podcast. And you shared your valuable things that personally I feel like this is the first time I'm hearing something very beautiful. So, Sylvia, thanks for sharing those thoughts as well.
Thank you.